I don't know a ton about businesses. I just paused for a moment. I
Wait.
was like, I'm sorry, I'm on the phone with the Small Business Development Center. How is that the advice that you give me?
Audio Jungle.
Hello, experts. Welcome back to Experts About Nothing. We have a very special episode for you today because we have a special guest.
Yay!
What's up? What's up?
We have our guest Vilas here today, who has been one of our friends from college. We are so excited to have him on the podcast. He's accomplished so much, but I wanted to start off by throwing it back to how we met Vilas, which is through the one and only Hoorahs.
Who Ross? Shout out. It's still thriving.
Iconic.
It is still thriving. Wait, Vilas, what is your first memory of meeting us?
What's your first impression?
I mean, first impression I think was excellent energy. Because I think with Ross, after a certain point, you're like, whoa, I see these people so much. Like we practice so much. It's really nice to have like a breath of fresh air because you guys didn't start dancing until second semester, my first year, I think, because I didn't super know you
Yeah.
at the beginning.
Mhm.
So when you guys came in, and I don't even think you
so
were dancing
either.
at that point. Like
Yeah,
I
I
think it was
think
just
you
Keisha.
started once I'd already
Yeah.
like dipped from being like an active dancing member of the team.
Yeah. So I remember Diksha just had like exceptional energy, and it was nice to, when we're kind of in these rhythms, to break out of that and be like, oh, great, we have a lot more life in the studio now. And Priya, you and I, we went on these walks that
I
everyone was
know.
jealous of. Do you
I
remember
was
this?
like, everyone was hating on me.
She
and
was
Vilas.
telling me just now about these walks, and I was like, where was I when you had 30-minute walks?
You were in like CS stacks, like for all of college.
That's true.
I was trying to remember like what originally started the walk trend. Do you
I have no recollection, but I do remember being like pretty excited that you thought about a lot of these worlds of like business and technology in a really different way than I'd heard people talk about before. I think a lot of it before was just kind of like, okay, this is the way to make money. This is what life is going to be like. And you were talking about regulation and holding institutions accountable. And I was like, whoa, that's really different. And I really respect that you're
Oh
thinking
my
in this
gosh.
way.
Yeah, I remember it started with walks and then I had a car in college, so I would like Vip, Vilas and I to like grounds and we would get like lunch or dinner.
So weird side note about driving. I have very recently gotten into this podcast called The War on Cars. I don't know if you guys have come across it, but it's just talking about the history of cars and how they've kind of destroyed cities and how it's so difficult for places to be walkable. It's really difficult to bike places or have urban transportation. I mean, you guys are in New York City, so you live in a different world than a lot of other places. But if I was to bike on the streets of Jackson, Mississippi, I'd be run over by a car. Like it's so dangerous. And I've been thinking a lot about, okay, like how much more awesome would our society be if, I could like walk to Priya's house instead of having to take a 40-minute car ride and sit in traffic, right? Or like Deeksha and I, we could bike to work together and like that could be our morning catch up instead of me having to put it in my Google Calendar to see you at there's just like cool ways where organic connections can happen. And yeah, cars have kind of ruined that. Cars are evil.
Oh my
I'm
gosh,
anti-car.
anti-car, first hot take of the pod. Anti-car.
Also, we have to talk about how basically we haven't seen Vilas in like 4 years. Yeah. And then we recently saw Vilas at a mutual friend's wedding. And literally, Vilas is actually the life of the party. Like,
he is MVP of the party. You talking about energy, like about how we
shocking.
No.
Yes.
It was such an amazing, like I forgot. I didn't get to share like the Ross after party experience with you or like stuff like that.
Yeah.
First of all, we did a dance together for the wedding. So we did a dance in the reception, which was iconic, and he was like killing that. And then the reception dance floor, no one ripped it up like Vilas.
No one. In fact, I feel like the DJ was feeding off of your energy.
Yeah.
It was so much fun. And also like I don't know how you guys have experienced this or processed this. It felt so good to be amongst so many friends in that context where you're celebrating someone you really care about. you're catching up, you hear about one another's lives, and you're also like dancing
Yeah.
and having a good time. I feel like those were kind of normalized when I was in school, where it was just that was a thing you did, right? Like you saw people pretty regularly and you celebrated them, and it was a tight knit community. Being an adult doesn't lend itself to that nearly as frequently. That wedding just holds such a special place in my heart because of how incredible it was, but also because of how distinct it was from my day-to-day experiences. It's so rare to just celebrate so intensely and so joyously, and yeah, I'm really glad I got to experience that with both of you.
I feel like we literally saw so many people that we haven't seen in such a long time. It just felt so nostalgic in like the best possible way, and everyone was just so comfortable with each other, and it was a really warm feeling.
That was my favorite part. It's just like once you create those bonds with people, which we did in college, you can like come back even after not seeing everyone for such a long time
to people in a long time.
Yeah, it's like that bond and that warmth is just like you pick up where you left off, and it just made it so fun. Shout out Jay and Raven.
Okay, so now we can give Vilas another hype up with our real intro.
Yes, okay. So Vilas, you graduated from UVA and then you went to Jackson, Mississippi to be a math teacher in middle school, right?
Close. So I graduated from UVA, so this was 2020 pandemic year. And I actually knew what I was going to do in December of that year. So I'd known for a while. Moved to Jackson and did a program called the Mississippi Teacher Corps. So it's a 2 years master's program. And while I'm doing the master's coursework, I'm in the classroom. So I thought I was going to teach high school social studies because that's what they told me I was going to be teaching when I went down there. I taught sixth grade computer science for 2 years. It was exceptional. Like teaching coding is really fun. I dropped out of 3 separate coding classes at UVA. So initially I was really terrified, but my program director was like, "Can you stay one step ahead of a 12-year-old?" I said, "I think I can manage that." And that's what I did for 2 years. And I think I learned just as much as they did.
Okay, and so that's what brought you to start Riverside Collective.
Yeah. So I think anyone will tell you, if they're someone who spent time around education or in the classroom, that there's so much broken about the way we do school. Schools are supposed to be about uplifting young people, celebrating creativity, giving them a sense of autonomy, right? Giving them the knowledge and preparation to lead fulfilling, exceptional lives. And that's not what you see a lot of the times in our schools. Some schools are doing a great job of being experimental and pushing kids in a really wonderful way. The school I was in, unfortunately, wasn't. And a lot of schools don't do that. So Riverside, this project began in October of 2021. So I was still teaching while this happened because it was so clear to me how broken the way we do education is, and there was something that needed to be done about it. And I felt uniquely positioned to have some classroom experience and relationships with kids to know, okay, like how can we kind of take what we're doing in the classroom, the things that we're working, and create a space separate from school where kids get to really pursue education in a really joyful way, while also supporting the mission of public schools and making sure that they're succeeding while they're inside of the classroom. So that's how it began. My friend Delana and I, kind of as a joke, we're talking about starting a cafe. And I was like, well, I'm not particularly passionate about cafes necessarily, but education is something I care a ton about. And it eventually evolved into the program that we're working on right now.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So Riverside, in one part, is a worker cooperative. So it is an ice cream shop, a cafe, a place that healthy food is sold, that's entirely owned by the workers, the people who are putting in labor to make the shop run. They're the owners of the space. Connected to Riverside's cafe is an after-school program where we focus primarily on entrepreneurship. And we have a certain cohort of students. They go through the courses. Once they're ready, they will work at Riverside and be paid for their labor and be a part of this democratic process. So what's cool about worker cooperatives is you don't have a hierarchical structure like you do in most sectors of the economy. It's democratic. All the people involved in the business reach conclusions and make decisions together. It's consensus driven. And I really want young people to feel a sense of empowerment and autonomy, and this notion that their voice matters a lot when they're in spaces with people who are older than them and just people more generally. Because when you enter the workforce, you should be able to voice how you feel. You should be able to participate in a work culture that takes your opinions, your voice, your interests, and your needs into account. And we're trying to create this model of participatory citizenship where you learn by doing, and the things that you learn are like, how can I be an active member of the institutions that I'm a part of? So that's kind of the summarized version of what we're trying to do. So,
wow, that's amazing. I'm actually speechless because I wish something like that existed when we were all growing up, because it's literally like a practicum, and you can see in front of your eyes a true business. So we thought we'd take a step back and actually talk about you and like your background, so we can get a little bit more context behind why you went down the route of teaching and like what maybe inspired you to do that. So what exactly did you study in school, and what did you actually see yourself being as a kid?
Yeah, so when I was younger, I loved dinosaurs, as might be common for little boys. I had dinosaur wallpaper all over my bedroom, read dinosaur books constantly. Land Before Time was my Bible, like obsessed with anything having to do with dinosaurs. And I remember in first grade, I asked my teacher, or we were doing some sort of activity about what you should be when you grow up. And I was like, oh, I like want to do something with dinosaurs. And she was like, I don't know what that profession is called, but go talk to the third grade teacher. She'll tell you. So, I like waddle over to the third grade teacher, and she's like, oh, like you want to be a paleobotanist. I'm like, great. Yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to be a paleobotanist. For people who might be listening, paleobotany does not really have anything to do with dinosaurs. It's about fossilized plants. But I would like go around very pretentiously at parties being like, oh, I'm going to be a paleobotanist when I'm older. And really, I just wanted to study dinosaurs. So that was me when I was really little. And then I think I wanted to be a lawyer at some point, which my mom is still holding on to as a potential life path for me. But I've been really interested in politics for some time. When I was in fourth grade, I think I ran for student council or something like that, and I was like, oh, obviously politics is the only thing I can do with my life if I was in student council. But I think that turned into a real passion where I got really interested in government and policy as a way to improve people's lives. The lawyer thing is less clear. I don't think that's part of my path anymore, but really doing projects and working on structural ways to benefit people's lives is still, I think, where my heart and my mind is.
And then in college, how did that culminate? Did you feel like college gave you more clarity on that path forward, or did you leave feeling kind of more confused than before? Because I know I've had that experience.
I think college is like so complicated to reflect on, I think, because I'm reflecting on the ways in which I learned about myself. I was in a specific program called Politics Honors, and there were 6 students in a seminar format with one professor. And the model was, you read a book, you wrote a 5-page paper every week, and you like debate your papers with the people in your class and with the professor. And the professor knows way more about this stuff than you, and they push you and challenge you and force you to refine your thinking. And that was like a phenomenal experience. And one of my professors gave me this piece of advice that I think I still very much am trying to live my life by. You don't know what you're passionate about until you do it. And once you do that thing, then you can really assess for yourself whether this is something you really care about. And I think a lot of my life decisions for the past 2 years have been informed by that.
That's an amazing piece of wisdom. Like, I was thinking back, I feel like so much of what people can get fixated on, and what I know I've gotten fixated on, is you want to just be able to know what your passion is from a really young age, or just like kind of like I should be driven by something. It removes the burden to just be like, let me experience things that I'm interested in and then find my passion. And there's no time limit on that, which I think is the biggest piece.
And I feel like a majority of our lives, we speculate about like what we think that we would love, but then when we actually go down that path and try said thing, we might not actually enjoy it. But I feel like a lot of us, me included, just kind of push through that and just study what it is you're trying to do, or like whatever, and then you end up somewhere that you may not love. But I think it's also really scary to like, pivot paths later on, especially when you already start down a path. So it's really amazing, like actually giving yourself the time to explore all these different paths and figure out really what speaks to you.
Yeah, I feel like we don't really have the space to do any of that
Mm-hmm.
exploration, right? Like, when have you had an opportunity to be a doctor without
Yep.
going through medical school, or who, like, actually sitting in the courtroom or shadowing the day to day of a lawyer, or, like a construction worker, or anything? Like, we don't seem to have the space to really try a bunch of stuff and explore a lot of things and figure out what feels right. And that seems important. Like, our gut is important, the way we feel about things are important, they give us certain forms of knowledge. If you take that out of the equation, then you're just kind of
Mm-hmm.
guessing and hoping, and that seems stressful in its
Yeah,
own
Definitely.
way.
definitely. After college, you committed to the program, you got your master's. You're now in this unique position where maybe you do have more time to explore what you want, and you're able to actually listen to your gut more now that you're out of kind of that education rat race in a way.
Yeah, so what I think teaching did for me was reintroduce me to feelings of passion. I care so much about school. I care so much about the well-being of my kids. I feel in a way that I haven't felt in years, it feels like, because the sense of caring about something is a really incredible feeling. So I think that's given me some guidance. I'm like, okay, I know that what our kids are getting is not up to par with what they deserve, and I feel strongly enough to want to do something about that. Now, my daily job is something I do to pay rent. I'm working as a barista at a coffee shop right now, making like $8 an hour. It's nothing, but it's with the purpose of having flexibility so I can really spend time thinking about the stuff that I really care about. But I also think that this is a passion that I want to give my all to, and I want to continue to listen to myself and think about how I feel during this process. And once, that's finished, and I feel as if I've given everything that I can, and the thing that we've built is good and sustainable and can last, I think this process is going to start all over. I want to try and explore and figure out a new thing, and maybe I find that I really care about it and want to dig in, and maybe I'm like, this is not the
Yeah.
thing for me.
I mean, that's amazing.
It's an
I love
amazing
like that
mindset.
outlook is so refreshing.
And I feel like for people our age, that outlook is very rare. There's so much external pressure that we face from so many different facets of life, whether that's just looking at your peers, whether that's like from your parents, from so many different angles. So to be able to like shut the noise out and be so true to your purpose and what you find right now is incredible. Like, actually, I am shocked. Actually shocked.
Thank you. I mean, it's really stressful for sure. I mean, I have to explain to my family what I'm doing, and they don't get it, right? And for understandable reasons. My mom wants me to be secure and safe and stable. When I tell her something like I'm working at a coffee shop, she's like, you can't tell people that. That's not a thing that people are going to understand. And I get it, but I also think it kind of reinforces this idea that we can't be adventurous, we can't be creative. And not to turn this back on you guys, but I mean, you've been out of like a school institution a bit longer than I have. What's it been like? I mean, discovering passions. This podcast seems like a great exploration of that. Have there been other things that you've come across where you're like, whoa, I'm really into this. I care a lot about
Yeah, it's not been the way that I thought I would find passions. I think you think that you're gonna like try something and have like this spark of like, I don't know, like a movie moment where you know that this is your passion. But I think just being more curious. When I first got out of school, I was dressed out to like make a living. I chose to live in like the most expensive city on the planet. So I was like, okay, I need to make some bread and like have a sustainable life. I want to be financially independent. And that was my biggest priority for, I think, 1 or 2 years. And then in the middle of that, I chose to leave, a big secure banking job and join a startup. And I didn't know where that would take me and what that secure, it didn't feel secure. It didn't promise me all the things that I thought I wanted, but seeing something being built was something that sparked something in me and something I definitely want to do again, and maybe on an even smaller scale that feels more personal to me. And then I think rediscovering art and dance, and the podcast has been like huge, like talking about it for like years.
Yeah.
And it's scary to like start something new and put something out into the world for judgment. It's trying to be more curious and not place too much pressure on it, and that's brought me the most like success in feeling passion in different ways.
it.
Yeah. And okay, retweet on everything about the security and just like being financially independent. My biggest thing was once I kind of got there and I was like, okay, like I feel independent. I have this life for myself that I feel pretty good about. after that, I think I was left with still a feeling of emptiness. Something was a little bit missing still. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of it was just, when I was in school, I was very heads down. When I was in school, I was in school. And I didn't really see my friends much throughout the week. And that's one of my biggest regrets of college, not using college for more of like a growing experience. And I feel like because of that, I did a lot of my growing after college in different ways. And like I lived in Ohio for a year, pretty independently separated from my friends, my family. I was there alone. And I think that was a really hard experience for me. And then once I moved to New York, I felt like I got closer because I was like closer to my friends, I was closer to my family. I had a group of people I could rely on, a support system. All that was great and like work was going good, but then I was like, there's still something missing. The pandemic obviously gave us a lot of time to reflect, and something that I think is really important to me and Priya too, like, and one of the reasons why we wanted to start this podcast is just that we didn't see much representation of people that look like us, that are in America, first generation. And I feel like the thing that got me through the pandemic, and we say this all the time, is just listening to a group of girls just talk. It's just such a calming feeling to know that everyone kind of has the same thoughts, same feelings, like are worried about the same things, have the same anxieties. There was just a gap in that I just didn't see much representation from people like us. That's one of the biggest reasons why we went down the podcast route. I love having someone in my ear all the time. And I think that literally got me through some hard times. And I feel like talking about things like mental health, talking about just our experiences growing up in our 20s, being in a big city, figuring it out is just something that I really loved. So that's one of the reasons we started the podcast and something that just brings me a lot of joy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. That's lovely.
Oh my gosh. We've never had to flip the script. And I was like, I was like interviewed on the pod. Okay, so bringing it back to school and your experience teaching, you said one of the reasons that you feel so passionate about this is your connection to your students. Do you have anecdotes, just like how did you get to build that? Because I feel like I've worked with kids and volunteered with kids, and it's hard. It's hard to build trust with them, especially at like certain age groups where we were all there. Like it's a tough age group. So how do you build that bond with them?
Yeah, I'm kids like see through BS really well. They know if you're being fake with them, they know if you're being genuine. And I think the thing that matters most is, are you showing up every single day? And I remember being shocked. I took, I think, a sick day like 3 months into school or something like that. And the kids lost it. They were like, you weren't here. Like, where were you? What were you doing? And I was like, whoa, that you paid attention. You cared enough to. If that happened in the first week of school, though, right? They don't super know who I am. I look really different. They don't know what my style is going to be. So the most important thing is about being consistent and showing up. I think that's also just true for people generally. The relationships I value so dearly are the ones who make an effort to show up for me. And if they can't for whatever reason, they apologize, right? They're like, I'm sorry, like this was going on. I'm sorry I couldn't be there for you. But I always know that they're there to have my back. And I see my relationships with my students in the same way. I'm their advocate. I'm there to make sure that they get a good education, that their mental and emotional well-being is taken care of. Of course, they're super annoying too, and like really mean. All of that is there, and like it is exhausting and it can be draining, especially when you're dealing with a lot of kids. But at their core, especially with middle schoolers like I was dealing with, so charming, so deserving of all of our love and protection. In terms of anecdotes, I have this one student who loves writing stories. His name's Aiden, and he wrote them on a notebook. And my first year when we were teaching virtually, I started a little book club, and we got on Zoom and talked about the books. And very quickly it turned into a creative writing class where the kids would just like write their own stories and share their stories. And Aiden sends me his stories religiously. And if I don't respond, he sends me follow-up emails. He's like, hey man, it's been a week. It's been 2 weeks. What's going on? Like, and they're good too. Like I really enjoy reading them. That's like really special. In the morning time, I'd get to school early so the kids could eat breakfast in my room. Normally they have to like sit quietly, and it's like this terrible situation where we like tell the kids they can't talk to their friends because we have to learn, which yeah, valid, makes sense. But also, we never give them time to talk. So they're like, all right, well, we're going to talk whenever we want to because we don't really have space to do that. And just kind of giving them space to like hang out and chat a little bit in the morning, as long as they didn't throw things, was a
Oh
fun
my
a fun
gosh, I wish
experience.
we had that.
I know. I feel like we would fight for like minutes in the hallway in between class.
And then people are yelling at you. They're like, get to class. And I'm like, I'm eating. Like,
Right.
I want to chat.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. That's an amazing idea.
And remember, okay, another funny anecdote. Me and Priya actually took a class together, or rather, we're in different sections, but we took the same class with the same teacher, and we volunteered at a middle school in Charlottesville together.
It was Albemarle Middle School, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And it was honestly one of my favorite times of the week. It was so fun. We went every Friday, I think.
Every Friday, yeah.
Yeah, and like we were there for 2 hours or something. And we were just helpers in the classroom, but retweet at everything you said. They were so funny. It was honestly a fun time to be there because the kids were really smart. After we started going a few times, they would also get comfortable with us.
Yeah, they'd be like, hey, like
they'd be like joking with us. I don't know. That felt really good to be there and actually help them out a little bit. And like, I loved that experience. It was really fun.
It's so right. You're so right. It's really about like showing up, and then they're like, oh, you're cool. You're here. Like you come consistently, and now I'll ask you for help. I think it's just about breaking that barrier and really showing up for people.
Relationships are hard too. They take a lot of time. They take a lot of trust and energy. There are plenty of students I had bad relationships with, and they would cause problems in my class, and I struggled because I didn't super know how to handle this. When I tried having conversations with them, it didn't super work, and I'd get frustrated and angry, and they would be like, whatever, right? They didn't care, and that was really hard. There's other situations where students who were terrible for every other teacher were excellent with me because we just had a really good relationship and could talk through things and had trust where they knew I wasn't going to call their mother for the sake of getting them in trouble. We're going to work on a problem together and like really, really fix it. And you win some, you lose some, but if you put in your best effort and try your hardest, that's all anyone can ask of you.
Yeah. And before you started this program, did you have like assumptions? Like, what was your mentality going into it?
Yeah. I thought kids would be able to read and write a lot better than they're able to. In our master's classes, there's a woman who spoke to us about teaching kids reading. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, why wouldn't a kid be able to read? What are you talking about? And she showed us a video about a kid trying to pronounce the word turtle, and he kept saying trazzle. He wasn't able to decode the words on the page. And I think that broke me a little bit. I just have such fond memories of reading as much as I possibly can. I used to like read in the bathroom, and my mom was like, that's disgusting, stop it. And like that's the type of kid I was, right? At every possible opportunity reading something. And to know that our kids have just been denied an education such that they can't read, like, so upsetting. And then that adds to, okay, your kids can't read. How do you structure a classroom where they're still learning and having positive, enriching experiences while not being able to actually address the root cause of reading deficiencies? It becomes really difficult and frustrating. And a huge number of behavioral problems happen because the kids don't understand what they're being asked to do, and they don't know how to move forward with it. So they act out or do something else to distract from the fact that they don't get what's going on in front of them. So I think that was a huge shocker for me. I'm also working in a Title I school, and the economic conditions are pretty well known for families and students who have to go to Title I schools. But I don't think you realize how much of an effect it has on kids until you're actually with them and working with them, and they kind of tell you stories about their responsibilities at home, or how they have to cover their ears because it's too loud, or they hear stuff outside on the streets that are scary to them. And when you're so young, to deal with all of that is really overwhelming. And you can know that intellectually, but then to actually go into a space and work with those young people, you're like, oh wow, we're failing you, not just in our education system, but in society more broadly, because you don't feel safe emotionally, mentally, physically, and we're not doing anything about that.
And just out of curiosity, what exactly is the definition of a Title I school?
So Title I schools are schools with a certain percentage of people going to that school under a certain income. I forget the specific numbers, but it's all like socioeconomic status dependent. Like 100% of the kids who go to my school qualify for free and reduced lunch.
Wow.
What consistently confused me about our schools is that we want to send kids to college, we want to send them into like well-paying quality jobs, we want them to be leaders, but we like don't give them the space to do any of those things, right? They don't have leadership positions, they don't have a say in what they're learning or what's being taught to them, they don't have a say in how their school runs. When pandemic restrictions on schools were changing, nobody asked kids how they felt, and they were the ones who might have been most susceptible to COVID. Their input is constantly taken for granted and regularly ignored. I genuinely believe that when kids are empowered and have that sense of authority to speak on matters that they know about, they'll take ownership over those things. If we built schools that really took into consideration what kids cared about, what they want to learn, and what's important to them, I don't think we'd have behavioral problems. I think kids would genuinely enjoy coming to school and give it their best foot forward because they were part of the process that created the institution. And that's the spirit behind Riverside, whether it be workers in the traditional economy, like me working at a coffee shop where I don't really have a say in what my conditions are, or our education system. The people in the systems should have total control over how those systems are being run. And that's the project.
I love how you mentioned being able to like speak up in a room full of people, some that are older than you, some that have more experience than you. I personally find that really difficult, especially in a tech environment where, you know, you're surrounded by majority males and everyone has varying levels of expertise.
Yeah.
It's just like sometimes speaking up is the hardest thing to do, whether that's a question, saying your honest thoughts about something. If we lowered that bar a little bit, people were able to just speak their real thoughts, things would probably get done a lot faster. I feel like I'd just be so much more productive and like I'd be able to give more, you know? Because I'm less scared. And
like you said, so much of my brain space is just like, oh, I need to speak up now. And I need, like, you're like thinking so much about what you're going to say, when you're going to say it,
how you're going to say it,
delivering it. And if I just was able to have that practice earlier on and have that like kind of ingrained in me from a younger age, then I would probably think more creatively too, like about like the solutions that I'm providing when you're working on something. But so much of it is just we don't get to practice these really important social skills that we need from a young age.
Yeah, and I think the other part of it too is that we're not in environments where that's promoted or facilitated, right? The reason we don't feel comfortable doing that, the reason I don't feel comfortable criticizing the way my boss is doing something is because we were raised in certain conditions that were like respect authority, hierarchy is the way we do things. You know, you work hard enough, you're successful enough, one day you'll be the boss and then you'll make the decisions. That's the environment that we grew up in. And a worker cooperative is kind of a rebellion against that, to say, no, decisions don't need to be made that way. You don't need hierarchy, you don't need an authority imbued with certain types of powers to make something run well. You can have a group of people who are motivated and care about a certain thing, and together you can reach a consensus. Now, that's like difficult too, right? Maybe it's easier if my boss is like, Vilas, today you're going to do X, Y, and Z thing. Regardless of how I feel about it, maybe things move faster, maybe it's more efficient. But this project is about saying, sure, things might be slower, things might be sticky, things might be difficult, people might disagree and it might be uncomfortable, but we're all on the same playing field and we're going to reach a conclusion together because that's how this works and that's how we all feel bought in.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so, as you said, it's like a democratic process where everyone kind of has a stake in the business of making decisions. How do you work through conflict? Especially, you mentioned that some of the students work in the shop as well, right?
Yeah, so this is all like on paper. So we still need to raise a lot of money to make this happen. But one of the things we've thought a lot about, because you can think about this on paper, is what conflict resolution looks like. My partners and I in this process have disagreed a ton, and that can feel like you kind of feel bad inside, right? Like you don't love it when the people you're working on a project with don't agree with you or like say something that puts you off. And what we're learning and working through and figuring out for ourselves is, okay, what are the proper strategies to address disagreements? What are the proper strategies to acknowledge how harm has been done and how to move forward from that? And it's a huge learning process. What's helpful is there's a ton of research that a lot of social workers and therapists and mental health professionals have put out about what it means to acknowledge harm, what it means to be honest to yourself but recognize other people's experiences, and also to kind of like check ego a little bit and leave it at the door. So you recognize and remind yourself that the project that you're working on is a lot more important than being right or being correct. And I certainly struggle with that. I think saying sorry and being apologetic is incredibly important. It's also hard to do. And this process is about both feeling secure in how I feel and validating my own emotions in a process, while also recognizing that I'm accountable for how I've made other people feel, and taking the time to be like, okay, I might be hurt. Like, I might disagree with how this thing was done, but I also played a part in making this worse, or I also played a part in like doing something to another person, and I need to own up to that. I think that's what makes like ownership and accountability so important, because everyone's responsible for themselves and they're also responsible for how their actions impacted other people.
Truly, the number of lessons I think that come from an experience like this are how
immense. Like,
oh my god, I'm just thinking about all the things you just said and I'm like, wow, it's little geniuses running around. They'll just know and have so much experience under their belt at such a young age that they'll just truly be amazing people when they grow up, you know?
Yeah, and like those are the tools you need in every facet of life, not just in your career, personal life, like building a family. As you said, so much of the conflict that we face and honestly really big systemic problems comes from not having practice in resolving conflict and not understanding that, you know, you don't have to win everything. I think that's such an ingrained thing that we like learn from such a young age, and we're just like, oh, I have to just win this situation even if neither party benefits from it at the end. Those lessons that you learn practically and not just being told but actually through experience will be so formative, and I can't wait to see this all come to fruition.
Yeah, we're so curious about the actual steps it takes to like build something of this magnitude and the things that you've had to think about financially, marketing, and just involvement.
Yeah, I was shocked a little bit to learn how difficult it is to start a business from scratch. A lot of the small business development centers that I spoke to in town, I remember one conversation ending with a guy hearing my whole business plan. He said, "I'm sorry, I can't really give you any specific feedback. I don't know a ton about businesses." I just paused for a moment. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm on the phone with the Small Business Development Center. How is that the advice that you give me? Right. And it's just like really difficult to find a lot of good resources for how you want a startup to look. And a lot of investors, especially, want to see evidence before they put their money into something. And on top of that, we're not offering anyone anything for investing in this project, right? Because it's entirely worker owned. It's about your labor being the thing that's valued, not a passive investment. That's another thing that makes it difficult. It's not like I can give up equity to someone who's willing to donate. It's no, the spirit and philosophy of this is the people who work there are the ones who get compensated and paid. So I think there's like a lot of different ways to think about this question, but I'll answer it from the financial side and the community development side. There's a lot of money out there and a lot of people with good intentions. And there's plenty of ways that a really wealthy person can set up shop in West Jackson and, you know, start a business and call it a worker cooperative. Maybe it's successful, maybe it's not. I think more often than not, it's not successful, because for really good community development to happen and economic success to emerge in a community, you need to have the buy-in of the people who live there. One huge learning process that's going to be really important for me is I'm not from West Jackson. I'm not from this community. I taught there for 2 years and I have relationships with students and I care a lot about it. But unless there's really good relationships that are continued to be built with community members, and it's proven to people like this is an institution that we want to exist in concert with you and support you and, you know, make this like a really awesome community space. If that piece is missing, then regardless of how much money an ice cream business makes, like, it's a failed project. It didn't work. It didn't do what it's supposed to do. So learning how to have community meetings, talk to parents, talk to students, hear their interests, hear what like is actually necessary and needed in the community, that's going to be a big part of this. We've developed an entire business plan around ice cream and coffee and food that we cater from a local vegan restaurant. But if everyone's like, we don't need that, there's no reason for this project to continue. And I think it'll suck, right? Like, I care a lot about this. I've spent a year working on it, but it's not going to happen. That's not what people are looking for. That's not what people care about. So we're about to launch our community meetings process where we talk to people in schools, we talk to people in businesses, hear if this is a model that works for them, that they think matters, that they think is important, that they think is necessary. And if they say yes, the next step is about bringing them into the fold. Now, one question, I'm really interested in hearing what you guys have to say about this and what other people have to say about this. This project is about dignity of labor, right? It's about paying people well for doing work and giving them ownership in a business. And we're working in a community that has a median income of $22,000. And the work that's required to start a business like this is a lot. Like, I spend all my time thinking about how to make this happen. And we want this to be really community driven, but we don't have the resources to pay community members to join this process and organize with us. And that feels really important to me. It's like, okay, we want to acknowledge and celebrate people's labor, illustrate that it's important to compensate it, but we might not be able to do the really grassroots community development sort of work in the way that we want to, because we don't have the funding to be able to pay people to like think as much in the way that like we're thinking about it. That said, right, like it matters a lot to have community input and make sure that West Jackson's really involved in the planning. So that's one of like the crises or things that I've been reflecting on the community development piece. The other piece of this is just money and making a business successful, because we can't employ people or pay people a living wage unless the business brings in money. So what does it mean to be in a good location that's accessible to a lot of different groups? What does it mean to have a business model where you have multiple streams of revenue so you can withstand various economic changes? What does it mean to like develop a space and create something that people actually want to spend time in? That's another piece. I think it's daunting in that we need to raise $200,000 to make the actual business exist, but in a way feels more straightforward than navigating community relationships and really organically creating something that people in West Jackson want.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think the problems are fundamentally so transferable to like any industry, or like even like we work in tech, obviously it's like so disconnected from community organizing and education. But at the end of the day, it's like supply and demand. And it's like, do our clients really want what we're offering them? No matter how sophisticated our setup is, the product is, it really comes down to that. And I think incentivizing people to be involved is some of the hardest thing. Like, I think like it's like sales. I need to like sell what my vision is and get real stake in it from people, and without the monetary incentives, that's even harder. Something that I hope comes true with this entire process is at a certain point, as like a community member, I think people really fundamentally do see problems around them after like living in a place for a really long time. You know, it's like hierarchy of needs. Once you've kind of met some of your basic needs, you do want to give back. And I think it is that emptiness that Diksha was talking about, that void that a lot of people feel and want to like connect with. And you're giving a lot of people a channel to do that. So I hope that they're able to capitalize on it, because I know that we always do. I mean, one of the questions we want to ask you like later is how to integrate community activism in your life in whatever you know, in whatever capacity you can. But I think it's a void that a lot of people feel.
Well said. I think something that I'm super curious about is how exactly are, you know, kids going to be incentivized to keep coming back and like keep contributing to Riverside Collective? It seems straightforward because we know like they've got so much benefit out of this. You know, as a kid, it's like what is their motivation to like keep coming back week after week? I'm sure you've literally thought about this like to no end. So I'm really curious what you have to say about it.
Yeah, I think the gamble is this. This is like the theory that this entire project rests on. If people have ownership over what they're doing, they're going to love it and they're going to care about it and they're going to invest in it. If people are owners in a business, they're all going to want to see the business succeed and thrive in a way they wouldn't if they were disconnected from a sense of ownership. In the same way, I believe that if kids really feel like they have autonomy and ownership over an after school curriculum and real say over what they're trying to create, they're going to dig in because this is theirs now and they have the power to make it into what they want to be. So that's my gamble. My gamble is we like structure this in a way where kids feel empowered enough to take ownership over it. They'll love it and they'll continue to come back. Now, the challenge, of course, is we're not used to thinking like this. We're not used to having a sense of control. We're not used to having a sense of choice over how our lives are structured, especially at such a young age. So I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains. I think it's going to be really important for me to be a facilitator, a guide, kind of talk kids through what they're thinking and help them reach their own conclusions. And it's going to be sticky and hard, and I'm going to try and figure it out in the process. But that's the core nugget, I think, that keeps this engine moving, that if you have ownership over something, you're going to make it exceptional.
Yeah, I believe in that hypothesis a lot, and I feel like we've experienced it in different ways. So again, I hope that all comes true. I'm like so excited for what does the timeline look like for you? Like, when do you know if, you know, this is something you guys can really like lift off the ground?
The timeline is as soon as possible. So right now our grants are going towards community sort of work and hearing what people are looking for and what they want. But we have about $20,000 from grant money, and that doesn't buy building, that doesn't buy the equipment that's necessary for a store to run. So I don't want to like continue my job of like working at a coffee shop, right? Like I'm doing that to learn the business and understand what it means to work in the world of coffee. So I am successful if I raise enough money, like if I raise our startup capital so we can set up shop and actually build something physical. So for me, it's as soon as possible, while also making sure that our community development piece is really intact and we're moving at the speed of trust and at the speed of what community members are interested in and hope for.
So this is truly your full-time venture right now. This is everything you're thinking about all the time.
Yeah, like I make coffee for people in the morning. No disrespect, but I don't understand why people order wraps at like 7 a.m. It's just like, every time I make one, I'm just like, you just want to order a milkshake, but not be.
It's hilarious because I was just telling Priya, I was like, we were in a Starbucks in like Florida, and they were pumping out like wraps left and right.
We were so stunned because I'm like, I haven't seen a person drink a frappuccino in like,
and I don't know, maybe
10
because
years.
New York is built a little different. Everyone's like, give me nitro
They're
cold
like,
brew on
cold brew, extra shot, and I'm just running, and we're like, okay. But that's so funny.
And outside of that, I coach the football team. Coach is a bit of a stretch. I take film for the football team and work with their wide receivers, and I tutor kids too. So that's my general daily schedule.
Amazing. You are like you're fully invested in this, and honestly, I'm fully invested in this now too. Just hearing this is actually so incredible, and I know like the first time like we briefly chatted at the wedding about this, I like didn't understand the extent of this project, and I had no idea you've been literally committing yourself for the last year plus and like thinking about this entire thing. It's incredible.
Yeah, it really is.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to take it a step back. We're going to bring it back to Vilas, something that we both have talked about, and we think like we live in a bit of a bubble because we live in New York. And so I think as a young, in your 20s person, it feels almost like in the States, there are like two places people live, and that's like New York and LA, or like New York and California, or like a couple cities on the East Coast, couple cities on the West Coast. What has your experience been like post-college, moving to Jackson and, you know, building your relationship with the community, and also like not living in like the most urban environment in like a decade that feels like you need to be living in an urban environment?
Yeah, as you might imagine, this is usually the first question I get when I tell people I'm living in Jackson, Mississippi. I love Jackson. I love being here for a few reasons. I think that community is an exceptionally special thing. And Jackson is kind of a place where there's enough people and enough things where you're like constantly stimulated, there's stuff to do, but people aren't so pulled apart in a million different directions, such that you can call someone and be like, hey, let's hang out, like let's do this thing. You can like do stuff in a very community oriented way, where I feel as if the narrative in a lot of other cities is, okay, like let me see if I can fit you into my Google Calendar 3 weeks from now. We can maybe talk. And I think there's something so beautiful and special about an organic relationship and organic community building. And I think I've found a particular set of people who also think that way. They care a lot about community. They really care about creating spaces where people can go and chat and build organic relationships. So I love that about Jackson. I think Jackson has a ton of radical potential too. In 2013, there was a socialist mayor who was elected and almost like redid the city's economy, kind of in the worker cooperative model that I'm talking about, was going to channel a lot of funding into that way to like really revitalize what Jackson was doing. But when you have a place like Jackson where the state is so virulently racist against you, and your like water infrastructure is crumbling and the roads are falling apart, I think that kind of activates something in people where they're like, this sucks. This is not right. We deserve better. Let's think of what we can do to transform our society so it actually works for us and not for other people who don't live here. And to be connected to that, I think is really, really important because people are thinking creatively and can demand creatively in a way where, you know, like if you're in New York and like systems generally work and the subway generally comes on time and things make sense, they're not as attuned to the ways in which things could be better. And I think in Jackson, people are constantly thinking about how to reimagine their surroundings to make it better. And that's really alluring to me. Like, I think it's a cool place where I feel like if you have a motivated group of people who care about something and they put enough energy into it, you can make it happen. And I like that a lot.
That's awesome. And I don't think I have personally thought that way about general infrastructure things in so long because of that. Because you're just like, it's New York.
It's just how it is.
This is how it is. Yeah. There's going to be this, the here, and that there, and like whatever. And you just kind of go about your day. But to feel really connected with your community and feel like you do have the chance to make a change and think outside of the box, that's awesome. I think in the pandemic, it started for me where I was like, where could I live? Like I just have thought in this like very narrow tunnel vision for as long as I can remember, like probably since I was 5 years old. I was like, New York, that was it. I just like went.
Yeah. Because it's awesome. New York rocks. Like, for
the best place on the planet. But I think, I don't know, like the diversity of experiences is really important. And like also hearing different perspectives is really important. I think I talk to so many people that have the same day to day as me or, you know, live in the same type of environment. So to like hear that is great. And I think we need to hear about more people, you know, living in different spots and like learning how to make things better in their day to day life. Or compelled to do that, it feels really invigorating.
Yeah, I mean, I hope you guys never have to experience what brown tap water coming out of your sink looks like, right? And one of the things that has made me feel like so optimistic about Jackson and its radical potential, I'm volunteering with a group called the Mississippi Rapid Response Coalition. And it's just a group of really well organized volunteers who exist to support the community in a time when the state isn't doing a good enough job or the federal government isn't doing enough job or the city doesn't have the capacity to support the community. And one awesome thing that happened for Jackson is, you know, got a lot of national attention. People donated money, people donated pallets and pallets of water. The thing that kind of gets missed though is when you have like trucks and trucks and trucks of water that are being sent to a place, you need spaces where people can go pick up that water. Also like need water from everything from cooking to showering, so it requires a lot of water. You need people to physically unload these crates of water from a truck, put them on the ground, and then put them in people's cars. And if people don't have cars, you need people to go drive to their houses and give them water. And I've been volunteering for 2 days and just like am in awe of how much people have been able to do. But also is like the hidden side of stuff, right? Like my back was so sore after one day of doing this. I was one of the youngest people there. Like for weeks. Like we've had a boil water notice for 4 weeks. The water system completely collapsed about 2 weeks ago. So like for 2 weeks, just constantly supplying people with water, and to do that just like out of the spirit of volunteerism and community building and like looking out for your neighbor. That's cool. That's what society should be about. That's what it means to like live and work and survive together. And I was really in awe of that, and just in shock and in awe of all the volunteers in Jackson who have made that happen.
Wow. I feel like we just take these things for granted. And when something as crucial and necessary as water is removed from your access, it's like there's a whole system in place that these volunteers have created to literally give people a bare necessity.
Yeah.
It's literally crazy. Like we literally had our water shut down for 7 hours and we were going berserk. So like the fact that this has been happening for weeks on end is like, oh my God.
What's terrible too is once the boil water notice was lifted a couple of days ago, safe to drink the water now, but the amount of trust and faith that's eroded, it doesn't come back, right? Like Jackson's had several water issues, so like this isn't the thing that pushed people over the edge, but it doesn't help restore any sort of faith in the way our government runs, which is also why I think, okay, like this is the time to create institutions that really work for people and take their needs and their interests into mind rather than what someone who's writing a bill 400 some miles away thinks about a thing.
That's crazy, and it's such a failure on a systemic level, but it's such a like win on just like a community level. To be able to like mobilize like that is no easy feat, and like you said, there's like a million things that people don't think about that you need actual manpower for.
It's amazing that you have time in your day to also like volunteer like that physically. Oh my god.
It's back and by day, right? Why do you need a gym? What's the fun of it? Yeah. If I can't lift water, why am I paying for a gym membership?
Time to put it to use. Wow. Well, all right. We'll end on some light questions. What are your hopes for Riverside Collective? Do you have, I don't know, like whenever I have a small dream or like something that I'm excited about, I feel like I have that like end vision of something really exciting. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, so Riverside is about creating a different type of economy, like a solidarity economy where people are in it together, they're all collaborators, there isn't a hierarchy that makes them feel completely alienated or disconnected from the work that they're doing. So my dream is to like start a type of movement, and this isn't novel, right? It's to build on movements that have already existed to transform our economy from one that is about exploitation, that is about low wage labor producing value for the rest of us, that is about just hierarchy and bosses telling laborers what to do, to one that's about, okay, like the people who are working actually get the wealth from the goods or the produce that they are selling. So I think step one of my dream is like Riverside in West Jackson to be really successful, for it to be a really good community economic engine. I also think it matters a lot because economic development is generally talked about in terms of gentrification. To develop a place is to displace all the poor people there and make them go somewhere else. From homes and families that they've lived with forever, they have to pack up and go somewhere else now because they can't afford to live there anymore. So this model is saying, okay, all the money that's made stays in West Jackson. People get wealthier as a result of working in the worker cooperative, and they're, like you make a higher wage, you can spend more in your community. It's like a positive economic cycle in that way, rather than, okay, expensive stuff is now in West Jackson, people can't afford it, they have to go somewhere else. So trying to create an economic model that really is empowering for the people in an area rather than pushing them out. And then from there, I think it would just be so cool to create an incubator type of space where people who are really passionate about worker cooperatives and starting their own business, they get like a binder from us, they get a bunch of advice and feedback and like actual support in developing their own businesses. And the economy transitions from one where you've got a boss who tells you what to do, to one where it's a group of people sitting together making decisions about things that they really care about. And that, I think, is an economy that works for people, that makes them feel like their labor and their time is valued and makes them feel dignified. And that's where I hope this project goes.
I mean, amazing. Very well thought out dream.
Yeah. Like Vilas, you're starting a movement.
Yeah.
We're in.
Building on it.
Yeah. And you will not be that guy from the small business place
right.
I will help you.
So another question is, how can people support Riverside?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for asking that question too. A big thing that we need is to be able to raise enough money to, create this business, create the infrastructure that's necessary to buy an ice cream machine, buy an espresso machine, design a building so people want to spend time in it and have a place outside of work or home that they can enjoy and feel safe in. So that's a particular need. I also have never started a business before. So if people want to tell me how to market well, or what sort of strategies really connect a product with people in a community, that's super welcome. Advice on how to run a really successful after school program, make kids really feel bought in. The more knowledge, the more information, the better. But I think the crux of it is to pay attention to the places that don't get airtime, right? There's people who live in West Jackson. There's people who live in cities across America who don't get the support that they deserve to live really wonderful lives, because a lot of our energy and attention goes elsewhere. And West Jackson is a place where people deserve to thrive and kids deserve to thrive and have all the opportunities in the world. So knowing that and being attentive to that, I think is really crucial too.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we will help you every way we can. And I think you guys have an Instagram page that we can definitely plug on the pod with our experts community.
Yeah.
Yes.
Would rock.
So I think
Would
it's, what is
absolutely
it,
rock.
at Riverside Collective?
Riversidecollective.jxn.
Okay,
awesome.
Perfect.
We'll put the links.
We'll put all the links. We'll do all that fun stuff, all the social
Amazing.
media.
Anyone has ice cream flavors too that they want to recommend, please feel free.
We got you.
We got you. Okay.
Amazing. That's another like side piece of this actually. Like I'm Indian and in a place that's 83% Black. One of the cool experiences I've had is being able to share my culture and traditions with my students, and in like creating like ice cream flavors, really excited to introduce flavors that we all might be really familiar with and love to my students who might not have ever like been exposed to that or experienced that before. So like pistachio ice cream has got to be on there, right? Like mango ice cream, and I'm excited to just kind of put that element, that personal
You got to
touch out there
document
too.
everyone's first reaction to like kulfi. I like
Right.
through your eyes.
It's
transformative.
Exactly.
And speaking of ice cream, my favorite topic ever, we're going to end off with a fun ass question. What is your favorite ice cream flavor? Velocity, you too, of course. And what is your favorite ice cream shop in the country?
So one like weird kind of component to this whole process is I'm starting like a coffee shop and an ice cream shop, right? I don't drink caffeine.
Oh, I was gonna say. I remember that because on our walks, I'd be like, we gotta stop here. I'm gonna get a coffee, and you'd be like, okay, I'll just hang out. And I'm like, how do you not drink caffeine? It's crazy.
Now you're like literally doing this day to day. You're like surrounded by coffee beans all day.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I just never like my parents were like, don't do this, don't drink coffee. And I was like, all right, I just kind of never did. But the weird place in my life where I do consume like coffee flavors is in ice cream. So coffee flavored ice creams are my favorite, and my favorite ice cream shop is this place in Delaware. It's called U Dairy, and it's run by the university and their agriculture school, and a lot of professors and students like think a lot about, like best processes for making ice cream, and like a bunch of students work there. And it was kind of the spot for us, when we were little, to like go eat ice cream with our friends. And they have this one flavor called the all-nighter that's coffee flavored that I love. Huge fan of the all-nighter.
That sounds awesome.
Yes.
Okay,
what's yours?
Okay, so mine, I think I have two, so I'm gonna cheat.
Two flavors?
Two like places / flavors.
Okay.
I'm a big when I was little, I think I liked all cookie dough and all of that type of stuff. But now I like the really unique herbally fruity flavors. So the blackberry, or I think it's blackberry, from Moo Through.
Oh, good.
So good. And for those who don't know, Moo Through was an ice cream shop that was on the way to the University of Virginia. So every time you go, it's a must stop. If you try to drive past it during Welcome Week or during a popular time, you'll be waiting in that line for a minute, but it's so worth it. So that is a big one for me. Second is there's this place called Tin Pot in the Bay Area, and they have a flavor called Blue Jasmine, and it's just the most unique thing I've ever tasted. I can't even describe it. It's florally, and also has this really good tea flavor. So good. I got a whole 3 pints. Every time I visit my cousins, I'm like, stock your fridge. I need this, but it's really good.
So I would say my favorite general ice cream spot is Moo Through. This has been my favorite spot in New York, I would say. That's called Whip, and that is my favorite place right now. It's all dairy free, so it's an oat milk base, and my favorite flavor is the strawberry shortcake, and they do it up so good.
It's so good. Look it up on Instagram. Those videos go viral
because not only do they look good, it actually tastes amazing, and you get down to the whole thing, entire cone. What they do, let me explain a little bit what they do. It's so good. You can use it for market research if you want.
Right.
But they drizzle the cone. They drizzle the inside with stuff. They put strawberry crumble, whatever, and then they do the swirl, hit it with another drizzle on top. and then they pound this topping on it. I love it.
Yes.
Well, I know where we're going next time I visit you
100%.
guys in New
We'll
York.
do an ice cream tour for business purposes.
For business.
And it'll be
Excellent.
amazing. One of my favorite episodes, I think.
Hands down.
So great.
My face hurts
Oh,
from
I know,
smiling so
same.
much. Thank you
I'm
for
like,
the
wow, feeling revitalized.
We were literally beat up all day, and this conversation has woken me up. So thank you so much, Vilas, for spending so much time with us, telling us so much about all your passions, and like we are so supportive of Riverside Collective. Stamp of approval. Not that it's needed from us, but big experts about nothing. Stamp of approval.
Yeah. Whatever you need, we got you.
We got you. Thanks, everyone.
Amazing.
See you next week.
See you next time.
Bye.